Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The first hit wasn't a punch. It was a boot, heavy, fast, and unexpected, slamming into Arya Vasa's ribs before she could even finish her sentence. The impact sent her sideways across the dirt floor of the abandoned shipping hangar, air bursting from her lungs in a sharp gasp. The metallic taste of blood rose in her mouth as she tried to steady her breathing. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. Not alone, surrounded by men who were ready for death and desperate enough to do anything to avoid capture. Her vision blurred for a second, the cold sting of humiliation burning beneath her skin far worse than the physical pain. She heard their laughter, sharp, mocking, cruel. The kind of laughter that carried the smell of danger. The kind of laughter that told her they didn't expect her to stand back up. Didn't think she could. Didn't think she had earned her uniform, her rank, her place. But it wasn't the hit that broke her heart. It was the sound of her own name, spoken with shock and fear, echoing across the hangar. Arya? It came from the shadows behind the crates, Commander Rylan Creed. Navy SEAL. Her mentor. Her worst critic. And the one man who had warned the team never to underestimate her. She couldn't tell from his voice if he was angry, terrified, or both. The men who kicked her first weren't amateurs. They were ex-mercenaries, desperate and cornered. They stood over her now, grinning like wolves who finally tasted blood. One crouched down, grabbing her chin between his fingers, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You don't look so tough now," he whispered, breath hot and sour against her skin. "Where's your team? Where's your big bad SEAL babysitters?" Arya didn't answer. Partly because her jaw ached, but mostly because she refused to give him the satisfaction. He slapped her lightly, mockingly, before shoving her face back into the dirt. The dust scratched her eyelashes, mixing with the streak of sweat running down her cheek. She felt shame coil inside her like a tightening wire. All her training, all her discipline, all her strength, reduced to a single moment of weakness. A mistake she couldn't undo. Another boot pressed onto her shoulder, pinning her down. "Let's finish this," one of them muttered. And just like that the air shifted. The hangar door slammed open, hard and violent, echoing like thunder. A chill swept across the room as cold night air spilled in. The mercenaries froze, boots still on her body, eyes widening as a single figure stepped through the doorway. Commander Rylan Creed. But not the version of him the world usually saw. This Rylan looked carved from pure fury. His jaw clenched. His shoulders tense. His eyes locked not on the men, but on Arya lying in the dirt, bruised and struggling to breathe. He didn't shout. Didn't threaten. Didn't even blink. He just whispered one sentence that made every man in that hangar go pale. "Who touched her first?" The mercenaries didn't answer. But they didn't need to. Their silence gave everything away. Rylan stepped forward, slow, controlled, deadly. The air around him seemed to hum, thick with a rage so deep it was almost suffocating. His footsteps echoed like a countdown, each one heavier than the last. Arya felt her heart pound not from fear, but from something far worse, guilt. He warned them. He told them not to corner her alone. He told them she was the one person they should never lay a hand on. But they didn't listen. The men braced themselves, ready for violence, ready for death, ready for anything except the truth. They hit her first. And Rylan Creed's response would leave them destroyed. The moment Commander Rylan Creed stepped into the hangar, the air tightened like a rope pulled hard around every man's throat. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't bark orders. He didn't even bother taking a defensive stance. He simply walked toward Arya with a controlled fury that looked colder than winter steel. Every shadow in the vast, empty building seemed to follow him, bending with the weight of his presence. The mercenaries exchanged panicked glances. They'd heard stories about Rylan Creed, stories that sounded exaggerated. Stories of a SEAL who survived things no man should. Stories of a soldier who never lost a teammate. But none of those stories prepared them for this version of him, the version that appeared when someone laid a hand on Arya Vos. Arya pushed her palms into the dirt, forcing herself onto her knees, breath trembling. She wasn't afraid of Rylan hurting her, she was afraid of what he was about to do to them. She tried to speak but her voice cracked. "Commander, don't." He didn't look at her. Not yet. His eyes were locked on the men who had hit her, eyes that didn't blink, didn't soften, didn't forgive. The tallest mercenary, Dakar, raised his hand slowly. Look man, we didn't know she was with you. Ryland tilted his head as if he didn't understand. With me? The room went still. Arya's stomach twisted. She knew that tone. She'd heard it once during a hostage extraction when a civilian child had been harmed. It wasn't a tone of anger. It was a tone of certainty, certainty that hell was coming. Ryland stepped closer to Dakar until only inches separated them. You didn't know she was with me, he repeated quietly. So you thought she was alone. Easy. Weak. Dakar swallowed hard. It was just a warning hit. She was trespassing. Ryland's eyebrow twitched. Just barely. A warning hit. Arya felt the floor beneath her seem to pulse with tension. She pulled herself a little higher, ribs screaming, vision flickering with white dots. Commander, stop, she whispered. Now he turned. Just his head. Slowly. His eyes softened, not with pity, but with something she hated seeing on his face. Grief. You should have called for backup, he said quietly. His voice wasn't scolding. It was scared. Not for himself, for her. Arya looked away. She couldn't tell him the truth. Couldn't admit that the reason she'd come alone was because she was trying to impress him. Trying to finally silence the doubt she'd carried since the first day she passed SEAL qualifications. The doubt that whispered, he doesn't think you belong here. Ryland turned back to Dakar. You hit the wrong person. Dakar tried to step back, but Ryland moved faster, too fast for a man of his size. In a single motion, he grabbed Dakar's wrist, twisted it downward, and dropped the man to his knees. The sound of bone giving way echoed like a snapped stick. The other mercenaries froze. Ryland didn't look triumphant. Didn't look satisfied. He looked disappointed. You think strength is measured by who you can hurt, he said, voice low. But real strength is measured by who you protect. The words hit Arya harder than any kick had. Another mercenary lunged, desperate. Ryland sidestepped easily, grabbed the man's arm, and drove an elbow into his chest with brutal precision. The mercenary collapsed, gasping for air. But Ryland's eyes went back to Arya, checking, measuring, searching. And she hated that he could read her so easily. Hated that he knew she wasn't just bruised, she was ashamed. He took a slow breath. Tell me why you were really here alone. Arya swallowed. Because I needed to prove something. To who? He asked. She hesitated. To you. The hanger fell silent. For the first time since entering, Ryland's expression changed. Confusion. And something she couldn't name. Before he could speak, Dakar, still on the ground, muttered through clenched teeth. This isn't over. Ryland didn't even look at him. You're right, he said. Then his eyes locked onto Arya's again. This is only the beginning. The sirens had stopped hours ago, but Arya could still hear them echoing in her ears as the medical team loaded the captured mercenaries into armored vans. The hangar lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the concrete. Ryland stood several feet away from her, arms crossed tight across his chest, jaw locked. He hadn't spoken a single word since extraction. Not to her. Not to anyone. Arya sat on the edge of the truck bumper, fingers digging into the cold metal as she replayed the moment she revealed the truth. Because I needed to prove something. Even now, she wished she had swallowed those words. Pretended they were never said. But there was no taking them back. Ryland finally stepped toward her, boots echoing sharply. Voss, he said flatly. No warmth. No softness. Just rank. Just distance. We need to talk. She braced herself. I know. He stood in front of her, tall enough that she had to tilt her chin upward. His eyes weren't angry, they were disappointed. And that was 10 times worse. You broke the first rule of our team, he said. The one rule that keeps people alive. Arya nodded slowly. Never operate alone. Never, he repeated. Not under any circumstances. Not even if you think you're ready. Not even if you think you're right. And definitely not because you're trying to impress someone. Her face burned. I didn't think it would go this way. That's the point, he snapped. Then he caught himself, exhaling sharply as he ran a hand through his hair. That's always the point. You think I've survived this long because I assume everything will go right. Arya looked down, thumbs twisting together. I just needed to show you that I'm not a burden. Ryland froze. Of all the explanations he might have expected, that one wasn't it. A burden? He repeated slowly. Arya, what on earth gave you that idea? She hesitated. The words felt heavy, but they spilled out anyway. Everyone looks at me like I'm lucky to even be here. Like I'm weaker. Slower. Like I passed selection because someone felt bad for me. Her voice cracked. She didn't bother hiding it. Even you. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was stunned. Rylan sat beside her, hands clasped tightly. Boss. I don't think you're weak. I've never thought that. She huffed a bitter laugh. You're always harder on me than the others. Because you don't see what I see, he said softly. That made her glance up. You fight harder than they do, he continued. You train longer. You push yourself until you break because you think you have something to prove. I don't go easy on you because I know exactly what you're capable of. Her throat tightened. Then why never say it? He shook his head, eyes glinting with an emotion she couldn't place. Because I thought you already knew. Arya blinked, stunned into silence. Rylan leaned back on his elbows, staring out into the dark stretch of runway. But you going alone tonight? That tells me you didn't know. That tells me I failed you. She looked at him, startled. No, you didn't fail me. Yes, I did, he said firmly. A leader should make his team feel secure, protected, trusted. If you felt you had to go prove something on your own, that's on me. Arya swallowed hard. Rylan. He lifted a finger. Don't. Not yet. His voice was calm now, too calm. Because tonight didn't end the way it could have, he said. It could have been worse. Much worse. And there's something you need to see. Arya frowned. See. He nodded toward the far side of the hangar. A military officer approached them, carrying a sealed black folder, the kind used only for classified missions. She handed it to Rylan, saluted, and walked away without a word. He placed the folder in Arya's hands. Open it. Arya hesitated. Then slowly she unlatched the metal clip. The first photo made her blood run cold. Her face. Days before the attack. Printed beside a target symbol. Rylan's voice dropped to a whisper. They weren't after the team, Arya. She stared at the page, trembling. They were after you. Arya's fingers tightened around the classified folder until the edges curled beneath her grip. The photo stared back at her like a mirror she didn't recognize, her own face circled in red ink. Not the team. Not the mission. Not even the base. They had marked her. Her breath hitched. This isn't possible. Why would anyone target me? Rylan didn't answer right away. He watched her, studying every flicker in her expression. He'd seen shock before. He'd seen fear. But this was different. This was the betrayal of discovering that danger had been tracking you long before you ever sensed it. Keep reading, he said quietly. Arya flipped to the next page. Another picture, her walking out of the barracks, head down, backpack slung over one shoulder. The angle was wrong. Too high. Taken from a rooftop. Her stomach twisted. Someone's been following me. For weeks, Rylan confirmed. Maybe months. She turned to the next page. A series of reports, surveillance notes, timestamps, patterns of her movements. Every run she took, every training rotation, every time she walked alone after dark. They knew everything. The air around her seemed to shrink. Why didn't anyone tell me? She asked, voice thin. Because I didn't know. Rylan's tone hardened with self-directed anger. Not until an hour before I found you in that hangar. Arya's pulse hammered. And those mercenaries? Just hired guns, he said. Paid to grab you alive. Her skin crawled. By who? Rylan reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled slip of paper. We found this on Dakar. He handed it to her gently, as though handing her something dangerous. Arya unfolded it. One name. Just one. Solomon Wraith. She froze. She had heard that name only once before, whispered in a rumor passed between operatives like a ghost story. A former intelligence tactician turned arms trafficker. Brilliant. Sadistic. Unpredictable. A man who sold nations their own fears. A man who disappeared years ago without a trace. You know who he is? Rylan asked, reading the flash of recognition in her eyes. Arya nodded slowly. They said he vanished. He did. Rylan's jaw clenched. Until now. The hangar grew colder. Arya hugged her arms around herself, suddenly aware of the bruise blooming across her ribs. So Solomon Wraith wants me, she said. But why? Rylan rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he only had when he was about to say something he hated. Because you weren't supposed to pass your SEAL final selection. He paid someone to sabotage your final test. To make sure you washed out. Arya's blood chilled. But I didn't wash out. Exactly, Rylan said. You passed anyway. You weren't supposed to. You broke a system he paid for. His voice deepened with something dark. And he doesn't like failures. Arya stared at him, stunned. You're telling me a man like Solomon Wraith targeted my selection test? What? I was just another candidate. No, Rylan corrected. You were the only candidate who saw through the rigged scenario. The only one who broke their pattern. The only one who refused to follow the path they laid out. She blinked. How do you know? Because I was there, he said quietly. I watched it happen. Those words shook something inside her. For the first time she understood the look he always gave her during training, not doubt. Not skepticism. Recognition. She swallowed hard. So what happens now? Rylan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Now, we keep you alive. We find out what Wraith wants. And we do not let you walk anywhere alone again. Arya lifted her chin. I'm not hiding. No one asked you to hide, he replied. But until we know why Wraith wants you, until we know what you uncovered without realizing it, you're a target. She met his eyes. Then what's our next move? Rylan looked toward the dark stretch of runway, jaw set like steel. We hunt the man who tried to take you before he tries again. He paused. And Arya? His voice dropped to something raw. Next time you break a rule, don't let it be the one that almost got you killed. The base felt different the next morning, quieter, heavier, as if the walls themselves were listening. Arya walked beside Rylan through the dimly lit operations corridor, her boots thudding against the concrete floor. She hadn't slept. Not a second. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that red circle around her face. She wasn't used to being hunted. She wasn't used to being important enough to be hunted. Rylan's stride never faltered, but she could feel the storm inside him. He kept glancing her way, quick, controlled looks meant to check if she was still holding herself together. She pretended not to notice. They turned into the intelligence wing, where analysts sat behind glowing screens, typing with the stiff urgency of people who knew time was a weapon. Commander Daxon Miles, head of tactical surveillance, approached with a tense look. You both better see this, he said, guiding them toward a darkened briefing room. He shut the door and dimmed the lights. A single monitor flickered on, displaying grainy footage. Arya leaned forward, heart pounding as she recognized the exterior of the hangar, the very place she'd been attacked. A shadow moved across the screen. Tall, thin, confident in a way that chilled her blood. Not running. Not hiding. Simply walking past the camera like he owned the world. Who is that? Arya whispered. Daxon clicked to zoom in. The image sharpened just enough to reveal a face she had only seen in defector files. Solomon Wraith. But what froze her wasn't his expression. It was what he held in his hand, a single piece of white paper with red ink smeared across it. The timing is important, Daxon said. This footage was recorded 10 minutes after Creed took down those mercenaries and called for medevac. Wraith knew your team wasn't inside anymore. And he walked right up to the camera. Like he wanted to be seen. Arya's palms went cold. What does the paper say? Daxon clicked again. The camera switched to a second angle, another external view. Wraith stopped directly beneath the lens, raised the paper, and let the wind unfold it. 4 words were written in harsh, violent handwriting. She doesn't know yet. Arya's breath caught. Know what? Rylan stepped closer to the screen, jaw tightening so hard she saw the muscle in his cheek twitch. He's playing with us. No, Daxon corrected, voice low. He's playing with her. Arya took a step back, feeling suddenly exposed. Why me? Why not the team? Why not you? She asked, looking at Rylan. Why is everything aimed at me? Rylan didn't answer right away. He stood very still, staring at the frozen frame of Wraith on the screen. When he finally spoke, his voice was as controlled as a locked vault. Because you saw something during your final selection exam that no one else did. Something Wraith needed hidden. He turned toward her. You weren't supposed to pass, Arya? But you didn't just pass, you broke their entire design. She shook her head, confusion twisting her stomach. But I don't remember anything unusual. The exam was straightforward. It wasn't, Rylan said. Not for you. They engineered a failure scenario. One designed to push you toward a specific door, a specific corridor, a specific blind spot. She blinked. I don't remember any of that. That's the problem, Daxon said. Wraith's message implies there's something you did see, something your brain refused to register or hold on to because it didn't make sense at the time. Rylan stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. Arya, what happened in that corridor? Her throat tightened. Images flickered at the edges of her mind, shadows, footsteps, a door slightly ajar. A cold metal smell. A whisper she had always assumed was stress-induced. She swallowed. I remember walking toward the exit. The lights flickered. And I heard something. Ryland's eyes locked on hers. What did you hear? Arya closed her eyes. And suddenly, there it was. A memory she hadn't touched since that day. A man's voice. Calm. Precise. As if speaking into a recorder. Copy that. The traitor is inside. Her eyes snapped open. Ryland's face drained of color. Daxon stepped back like the room had tilted. Arya's voice shook. There was someone else in the facility during my exam. Ryland exhaled slowly. Arya, you weren't a candidate that day. He paused, letting the weight drop. You were a witness. The memory hit Arya like a punch to the ribs, sharp, disorienting, and almost unbelievable. She pressed a hand against the briefing table to steady herself. Witness. The word echoed in her mind like a warning bell. She had thought that day was just another test. A brutal, exhausting, unforgiving final exam meant to break candidates down to nothing. But she hadn't been a candidate. Not really. She'd been in the wrong place, at the wrong time, hearing the wrong voice. Ryland stepped toward her slowly, as though approaching someone standing on a cliff edge. Arya, you need to walk me through that corridor. Every second of it. Her pulse hammered in her ears. I told you I barely remember. You remember enough, he said. Your brain didn't erase it. It buried it. That's different. The moment you said the word, traitor, everything changed. Daxon pulled up the facility blueprint on the monitor. The map unfolded like a cold metal puzzle across the screen. Show us where you were, he said. Arya pointed to a long stretch of hallway marked Sector C12. Here. The lights flickered. That's when I heard the voice. Daxon traced the corridor with a finger. This wing wasn't part of the official exam. Candidates weren't supposed to enter this area. Ryland narrowed his eyes. Which means the exam was modified. Intentionally. Arya crossed her arms, trying to keep her voice steady. I wasn't lost. They routed me that way. Ryland nodded grimly. Because someone thought you'd fail to notice the detour. But you didn't. And that made you a liability. She swallowed. What exactly did I witness? Daxon clicked the blueprint again. A hidden room lit up, a storage chamber she never knew existed. This room was supposed to be sealed during your test. But according to facility logs, he typed quickly. Someone accessed it for exactly 4 minutes. During my exam, Arya whispered. Ryland's voice hardened. And whoever was inside it wasn't supposed to be anywhere near seal selection. Arya took a shaky breath. I didn't see anyone. Just heard the voice. It echoed like the person was speaking into a comms device. Daxon replayed her words slowly. Copy that. The traitor is inside. Ryland's jaw tightened. Which traitor? Who were they watching? Who were they hunting? Daxon tapped a key and froze the blueprint on the hidden room. We found out something else. Arya looked at him. What? That room wasn't being used for storage, Daxon said. It held a prototype device, one Wraith designed years ago before he went off-grid. Arya frowned. What kind of device? Daxon hesitated. A neural transmitter. Capable of recording and storing audio without standard equipment. Completely undetectable. If Wraith had one inside that room. Then someone was speaking to him in real time, Ryland finished. Arya's breath caught. A mole. Inside the exam facility. Inside the military, Daxon corrected. A chill crawled down Arya's spine. Ryland stepped closer, lowering his voice to something gentle but firm. Arya, listen to me. If Wraith wanted that corridor silent, and you heard something you weren't supposed to, that means you're not a random target. You're a threat. To his entire operation. Arya shook her head. I didn't even understand what I heard. Why chase me now? Daxon answered. Because Wraith doesn't care whether you understand. He cares that you were there. He leaned in. And that you survived. The room grew heavier, suffocating. Arya stared at the paused blueprint, the corridor she had run down, convinced she was just fighting to pass a test. All this time she'd been carrying a secret she didn't know existed. Ryland placed a hand on the table, leaning toward her. There's something else you need to see. He pulled another file from his jacket. This one was unmarked, sealed with a strip of red tape. Arya opened it slowly. Inside was a single image. A man's silhouette. Standing in the same corridor she had walked through. Face turned away. But the voice she remembered, the whisper in her memory. Her heart lurched. I know that stance, she whispered. I've seen him before. Ryland's brow furrowed. Where? Arya lifted her eyes, breath trembling. On base, she said. He's here. He's one of us. Ryland's expression darkened like a storm rolling across the horizon. Arya, are you telling me the mole wraith was speaking to us inside our own SEAL unit? Arya felt the truth settle like ice in her chest. Yes, she whispered. And he's closer than we think. Night had fallen over the coastal base, but the wind carried a bitter chill that seemed to follow Arya wherever she went. The moonlight reflected off the water, silver and sharp, cutting through the darkness like a knife. Ryland led her through the shadows, boots silent on the gravel road. The weight of the revelation pressed on her chest. Wraith had a mole inside the SEAL unit, and that mole knew her every move. Every step she took could lead him straight to her. Stay close, Ryland whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. We don't know who's compromised yet. Could be anyone. Arya nodded, heart thundering. She didn't feel like a SEAL. She felt like prey. But there was a fire in her chest she couldn't ignore. She wasn't going to run. Not now. Not ever. They reached the perimeter fence. Beyond it, the terrain fell sharply to the rocky coastline below. Ryland stopped, crouched low, and checked the GPS device strapped to his wrist. The drones have spotted movement near Sector Delta. Could be Wraith's operatives, or worse, our mole making a move. Either way, we go in now. Arya tightened her gloves, gripping the stock of her rifle. The metal felt familiar. Solid. A lifeline. Memories of brutal training cycles, freezing nights in the mountains, and countless hours perfecting her aim surged through her veins. She was ready. Ready for anything. They moved silently through the shadows, rifles raised. Every step was calculated. Every sound magnified. Arya's senses were sharp, eyes scanning the darkness for the slightest flicker. Her mind raced, piecing together the fragments of Wraith's plan. The mercenaries had been just the first wave. Someone else, inside, had orchestrated the rest. A sudden rustle to her left. She froze. Ryland's hand shot up, signaling silence. A shadow detached itself from the rocks, a figure moving swiftly, deliberately, but not in a threatening way. Arya's pulse spiked. Ryland whispered, Wraith's men? 2 of them. Northeast ridge. Keep low, we flank. Arya followed his lead, moving silently over the jagged stones. The shadows swallowed them as they circled around. The first operative came into view, crouched and scanning the perimeter with a high-powered rifle. Arya's fingers twitched. Her breath steadied. She raised her weapon slowly, aligning the scope. Her finger hovered over the trigger, but Ryland's voice whispered in her ear, Not yet. Let them make the first mistake. The operative shifted, unaware of the silent hunters closing in from behind. Then a second shadow moved across the ridge. A mistake. The operative looked up, startled. Before he could react, Ryland struck. Quick, brutal, precise. The man crumpled silently into the rocks. Arya's eyes widened, adrenaline surging. She felt a strange mix of awe and terror. This was real. Not a drill. Not a test. Lives were on the line. Ryland gestured. Move. They descended toward the second operative. Arya's heart hammered in rhythm with her steps. Every nerve screamed in anticipation. She caught a glimpse of a blood-stained notebook in the operative's pocket, red ink smeared across the pages. A message. A warning. She snatched it. Skimming the lines, her blood ran cold. Asterisk, she knows too much. Neutralize before extraction. Asterisk, Ryland whispered, Wraith's men. 2 of them. Northeast ridge. Keep low, we flank. Arya followed his lead, moving silently over the jagged stones. The shadows swallowed them as they circled around. The first operative came into view, crouched and scanning the perimeter with a high-powered rifle. Arya's fingers twitched. Her breath steadied. She raised her weapon slowly, aligning the scope. Her finger hovered over the trigger, but Ryland's voice whispered in her ear, Not yet. Let them make the first mistake. The operative shifted, unaware of the silent hunters closing in from behind. Then a second shadow moved across the ridge. A mistake. The operative looked up, startled. Before he could react, Ryland struck. Quick, brutal, precise. The man crumpled silently into the rocks. Arya's eyes widened, adrenaline surging. She felt a strange mix of awe and terror. This was real. Not a drill. Not a test. Lives were on the line. Ryland gestured. Move. They descended toward the second operative. Arya's heart hammered in rhythm with her steps. Every nerve screamed in anticipation. She caught a glimpse of a blood-stained notebook in the operative's pocket, red ink smeared across the pages. A message. A warning. She snatched it. Skimming the lines, her blood ran cold. Asterisk, she knows too much. Neutralize before extraction. Asterisk. Ryland's eyes met hers. Wraith's plan isn't random. He wants you. He's been planning this since the exam. That notebook proves it. Arya swallowed hard. So what now? We keep moving. We flush out the mole. We survive. And we make sure Wraith regrets ever putting his hands on you. A sudden snap of stone echoed from above. Arya hit the ground instinctively. A bullet whizzed past, grazing her helmet. The hunt had just begun. Ryland's hand found hers. Ready? Arya's grip tightened on her rifle. Her heart roared. Always. Together, they vanished into the shadows, the night alive with danger, betrayal, and the pulse of a mission that had become personal. The night was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. Arya and Ryland moved through the jagged cliffs, wind whipping against their faces, carrying the distant crash of waves against rock. Every step felt deliberate, every rustle of gravel amplified, every flicker of light a warning. The mole wasn't just anywhere, it was inside their team, someone who knew their routines, someone who had been watching Arya long before Wraith made his first move. They paused at the edge of a supply shed, the faint glow of light spilling through the cracks in the walls. Ryland crouched, signaling Arya to do the same. Inside, he whispered. Two of them. Our mole and one of Wraith's operatives. Watch carefully. Arya's pulse thumped in her ears. She raised her rifle slowly, scanning for any movement. Her eyes caught a familiar gait, a pattern she had seen countless times during training. A shadow moved with ease, confident, precise. And then it stopped. Her stomach twisted. I know him, she whispered. Ryland didn't reply. He just gestured for her to wait. The figure stepped fully into the dim light. Arya's breath caught. Heart hammering, she recognized the uniform, the insignia. It was Lieutenant Corbin Hale, a man she had trained alongside for months, someone she had trusted implicitly. But his face was pale, controlled, his eyes sharp with calculation. Ryland's jaw tightened. The mole, he muttered. Corbin's gaze flicked past her to the doorway. You're too late, he said smoothly, voice calm, almost eerily casual. Wraith knows you're coming. Arya felt a surge of betrayal, a sick weight pressing down her chest. Every memory, every shared joke, every drill they had endured together, all twisted. She had trusted him. All of them had. Ryland whispered, stay low. Wait for my signal. Corbin moved closer to a crate, retrieving a small case. Arya's fingers itched on her rifle, but she obeyed, holding her breath. The operative he had called and waited behind, a black-clad figure with a rifle aimed toward the shed entrance. Suddenly, a flash of movement, a small, reflective device in Corbin's hand. A remote trigger. Arya's mind raced. Asterisk explosives? No, neural transmitter. He's signaling Wraith. Asterisk. Ryland's hand brushed against her arm. Now. In a blur of motion they struck. Ryland dove to the operative first, disarming him with a single, precise move. Arya rolled forward, kicking Corbin off balance. The case skidded across the floor, clattering open. Inside, wires and small devices gleamed under the flickering light. A miniature neural transmitter, identical to the one she had seen in the hidden room during her exam. Corbin scrambled backward, pulling a pistol. Arya raised her rifle, aiming steadily. Drop it, she commanded. He froze, calculating. For the first time, Arya saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. Not for himself, but for what he had unleashed. Ryland's voice cut through the tension. Corbin. End of the line. You betrayed us and you almost got her killed. The words hit harder than any bullet. Arya felt the betrayal deep in her bones. Why? She demanded. Why him? Why me? Corbin's hands shook. Wraith, he promised power. He promised influence. He said if I helped him, I'd rise above all of you. Above the SEALs who never believed in me. His voice cracked. It was easy to make you the target. No one suspected, not even Creed. Arya swallowed hard, fury and hurt mixing into a storm. You almost died, Corbin. And not just you, you almost got me killed. Ryland stepped forward, rifle lowered, gaze icy. He's lying, Arya. Wraith's manipulation goes deeper. He knew exactly what he was doing. Corbin was just a pawn. Arya nodded slowly, tension coiling inside her. The realization settled like ice. The threat wasn't over. Wraith was still out there, still controlling pieces on a board only he understood. And she had been dragged into the center of it. Corbin raised his hands slowly, surrendering, but his eyes didn't leave hers. You don't understand. I did it for survival. Arya's rifle stayed fixed on him. Survival came at a cost. Tonight, that cost had been betrayal. Rylan muttered, almost to himself, "Now we see everything. The mole, exposed. But Wraith, he's next." The wind whipped through the shed, carrying the taste of salt and fear. Arya's fists clenched. The hunt had just escalated, and the real war was only beginning. The coastal night was a storm of wind, fog, and tension. Arya crouched behind a jagged boulder, the barrel of her rifle resting lightly on her shoulder, eyes scanning the rocky terrain below. Somewhere in the darkness, Wraith was moving, calculating, manipulating. After weeks of chasing shadows, dodging ambushes, and confronting betrayal from within, the hunt had led her here, to the abandoned naval dockyard on the outskirts of the bay. Rylan crept beside her, silent and precise. His presence was both anchor and reassurance. "This is it," he whispered. "We end this tonight." Arya nodded, teeth clenched. She could hear the subtle rhythm of the waves, the creak of rusted metal, the faint shuffle of boots against the dock. Every sense screamed danger. Every shadow was alive with menace. From a vantage point atop the central crane, Wraith emerged. Dark silhouette, tall, lean, carrying an air of calm that made Arya's blood run cold. Around him, his remaining operatives spread across the dock, weapons raised. One glance at the scene and it was clear. He had expected them. But what he hadn't expected. Arya. Her fingers tightened on her rifle. She remembered the mercenaries, the mole, the notebook, every moment that had led here. Every betrayal, every calculated move, every narrow escape had prepared her for this. She wasn't the candidate anymore. She was the hunter. Rylan tapped her shoulder. "On my mark. Take the left flank. Watch the shadows. Remember, don't underestimate him." Arya swallowed and nodded. Her heartbeat thundered. The wind carried Wraith's voice down to them. "Come." Taunting. "You think you can corner me, Commander Creed? You think she has a choice?" Arya stepped forward, voice firm and unwavering. "Your choice ended the moment you targeted me. Tonight it's over." Wraith laughed, low and sharp, a sound that cut through the fog. "Do you even know what you're holding in your hands, girl? Do you know how far you've walked into my trap?" Rylan's eyes flashed. "We don't care. You underestimated her. And that's your mistake." In a blur of motion, the operatives opened fire. Bullets shredded the silence. Arya rolled to cover, returning fire with pinpoint precision. Rylan took down one operative after another, swift and brutal, while Arya moved like a shadow, silent and lethal. Each shot was measured, controlled, every breath a statement of defiance. Wraith's silhouette remained unmoved atop the crane. "Come." Calculated. He had orchestrated everything, her exam, the mole, the mercenaries, but he had not accounted for her resolve, the bond she shared with Rylan, or the fire that had been ignited inside her the moment she realized she wasn't alone. Arya sprinted across the dock, low and fast, using crates and rusted containers for cover. The final operative went down under her steady aim. Only Wraith remained. He descended the crane, gliding down the ladder with an eerie grace, gun drawn, eyes locked on hers. "You're good," he said. "Too good. But this isn't your war." "It is now," Arya spat back. Rylan appeared at her side, twin rifles raised. "Time to end this," he said, voice steady, cold. Wraith smirked. "Then do it." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The wind, the waves, the night itself seemed to pause. And then, coordinated, they moved. Rylan struck first, a precise shot disarming Wraith, forcing him to stumble backward. Arya advanced, heart hammering, rifle steady, every ounce of training and instinct focused. Wraith's smug expression faltered as she pressed forward, eyes blazing with fury and determination. One final shot, a net deployed from her rifle, entangled Wraith, halting his movements. He fell to the ground, breathing hard, eyes wide, no longer in control. Arya stepped closer, rifle lowered but gaze unyielding. "It's over," she said. "No one threatens me, or anyone I protect." Wraith's smirk vanished. Fear flickered in his eyes for the first time. "You don't know the game," he whispered. "Now I do," Arya replied. "And you just lost." Rylan placed a hand on her shoulder, silent approval. The storm around them seemed to exhale, the tension easing, the dockyard bathed in moonlight and quiet. Arya knelt beside Wraith, checking the neural transmitter strapped to his body. "This ends tonight. No more lies, no more shadows." Rylan exhaled, eyes scanning the horizon. "She earned this," he said softly, almost to himself. Arya looked at him, chest heaving, eyes burning with resolve. She had survived betrayal, hunts, and shadows. She had faced death and she had stood tall. Tonight she was not just a survivor. She was the hunter. And Wraith, the man who had tried to control her life, would never threaten anyone again. The dawn crept slowly over the bay, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and gold. The battle-scarred dockyard lay quiet, save for the distant call of gulls and the soft lapping of water against rusted metal. Arya stood at the edge, rifle lowered, eyes scanning the horizon. For the first time in weeks the air felt safe. For the first time she could breathe without the weight of being hunted pressing on her chest. Rylan stepped beside her, boots crunching softly on gravel. "We did what we had to," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of awe, of respect. "You kept your head. You stayed alive. You didn't run. You fought. And you won." Arya let herself smile, small but genuine. She had been underestimated, hunted, and betrayed, yet here she stood, stronger, wiser, and unbroken. "We both did," she corrected, glancing at him. "I couldn't have done it without you." Rylan's gaze softened. "No. You did it. Every shot, every decision, it was all you. I was just there to make sure you didn't get crushed by the world trying to kill you." Her eyes shifted to the horizon where the first ships of the morning patrol slid across the water. She thought of the mole, Corbin Hale, and how betrayal had almost cost her life. She thought of Wraith, lying bound and defeated, his plans unraveling under the weight of her courage. And for the first time she felt a strange mixture of sorrow and satisfaction. Sorrow for what had almost been lost, satisfaction because she had survived. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked quietly. Rylan exhaled slowly, scanning the dockyard once more. "Wraith is out of play. Corbin's under interrogation. The mole's network is dismantled. As far as I can see, yes. For now it's over." Arya nodded, letting the tension in her shoulders ease. Her body ached, bruised and exhausted, but her spirit felt indestructible. She had been ready for death, hit first and survived. And in doing so she had proven something, not just to Rylan, not just to herself, but to the world. She turned to look at him fully, eyes clear and resolute. "You never told me why you pushed me so hard during training. Why you always tested me even when it felt impossible." Rylan studied her, expression unreadable for a long moment. Then, with a small, almost imperceptible nod, he said, "Because I knew you could survive this. I had to make sure you knew it too. That you could fight when no one was watching and when the stakes were life and death." Arya let that sink in. The truth was simple yet profound. She had thought she was alone, that every shadow carried a threat she couldn't fight. But she wasn't alone. And the strength she had honed, every grueling hour, every scar, every bruise, was enough to face anything. Behind them, the first helicopters of reinforcements touched down, lights cutting through the morning fog. Backup had arrived, but Arya didn't feel the same tension she had before. The threat was neutralized. The danger had passed. She turned back to the water, letting the wind whip her hair across her face, eyes bright with clarity. A chapter of her life had ended in shadows, fear, and betrayal. But the next chapter, one she would write herself, began with sunlight, survival, and victory. Rylan placed a hand on her shoulder one last time. "You're ready for anything now," he said. Arya nodded, a small smile breaking through the fatigue. "I am." The waves crashed below, relentless and eternal, a reminder that life moved forward just as she would. The docks, the betrayals, the hunts, they were behind her. Ahead lay freedom, choice, and a future she had earned through courage, wit, and sheer determination. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't the end of challenges. But now she had the proof that no one, no threat, no enemy, no shadow, could break her. She squared her shoulders, raised her chin, and took the first step forward into the new day. Because Arya Voss didn't just survive. She thrived. She won. She lived.